Today I'm going to talk about a subject which is not gospel. I'm sure most of you are alluded to it. Most of you are students. It impacts you because you work with somebody called teacher all the time. I'll give you a context of this particular topic from my own life. And I just want to tell you, born, brought up in a lower middle class family, for me, education was a privilege and it's a luxury, which led to a constant deluge of looking at financing for my education, thereby begging, borrowing money from various parties, working for it, day in and day out, before school hours, after school hours, before college hours, on the weekends, led to get educated and be in front of you today. 30 years back, Professor Madhav Shenoy, who was a great teacher, took me to a class consisting of working professionals. I was sitting in the back row, listening to him and his ability to teach the experienced professionals. I went in my candid moments with the professor of those era and requested him, will I get an opportunity to teach? As my luck favored me, about 3 weeks later, Professor Madhav Shenoy fell sick. And he had the Bharati Vidya Bhavan session scheduled to start at 6 p.m. in the evening. And he requested me, Praveen, will you be able to take the session? As all of us know, the so-called brilliant students or so-called highly literate student, highly scored student are requested to speak in many forums in the college environment. Butterflies were heavily driving me to be in front of these learned professionals. Went there, did my bit by virtue of knowing the subject reasonably well over a period of time. I could do a good job, and what happened was a history. I cultivated this habit of teaching during my personal time. Just to give you a context, I'm an HR professional by design, a teacher by default. Today, almost in my last 3 decades of journey, I've educated, privileged, underprivileged, not so privileged, who would like to be privileged, formal, informal, semi-formal settings, global cities in the world, and unknown villages in India. My journey to educate, re-educate, learn, and relearn along with them is my value proposition during my personal time. Having said this, I would like to give you a value proposition from my experiences as a teacher. This slide primarily allude you to certain facts which all of us have to keep in mind as a teacher. And somebody said, teaching is such a beautiful profession wherein you really fasten the process of learn to learn. Never ever believe those anecdotal experiences of knowledge which you bring to the table, and there is a hierarchical movement of flow of knowledge from top to bottom. I think we should better stop doing that. We should focus on adults who are with us, who are constantly talking to us, working through us, and believe in teaching being a continual process rather than a small event. Who are our audience? Who are our customers? Our customers are the student. And let me tell you what kind of characteristics I've seen in my life looking at the students. I found an obnoxious amount of wisdom which a normal teacher doesn't have at any given point in time when I look at a student. Given an opportunity, a teacher will have an ability to teach from the previous notes of historic teaching experience. When you look at a student, he will look at continuous improvement. A child always seeks feedback. And as a student, I think we need to evaluate students from a standpoint of making them realize self-reflection, thereby telling them to strengthen their strengths and work on their weaknesses, rather than being prescriptive. So who should be a teacher in that case? Who should be a teacher? A teacher is one who has a brilliant approach to have leveraging capability by ensuring your collective intelligence from the bottom of the class to realize value for the session rather than value-driven approach by virtue of your monkey, which has become a baboon called experience, drawing and driving the path of excellence from high to low. That's why I picked up this anecdotal picture for us to realize how does it feel to be a teacher. Many of us are extremely well placed in life, understanding the first half of the picture. What we don't understand really is our ability to build in creativity, which is the sole survival factor for teacher to exist for the next 3 decades. Our ability to be a geek once in a while gives us an edge over the student. Our ability to be extremely passionate and being social, moving around with kids and students, makes us little more relevant in the context of gig economy. What are some of the iconic insights which I got? You are a teacher, you better be original. It's easy to copy. Copy leads to your own style and your own iconic outlook, but being original helps. Sometimes it's better to take 2-3 steps behind or go back into the history and see where did you start, and it's good to renounce teaching and get back with a fresh outlook. If you are preparing for a session, if you are preparing for an experiment to be done in the lab, it's better to go with a fresh slate and do it yourself for the first time and every time when you get into the class. You don't know, your customer called student will be asking you a question which has never been asked by the students in the last 3 decades. Believe me, many of us have to realize the value proposition of learning and sometimes give up on teaching. Learning provides an opportunity to have an adult-to-adult conversation. We are not talking to children who are 5th graders. And my next slide would be believing in yourself and sometimes go and teach the 5th grader. Many times the younger you are, the younger you relate to, you will have some dispassionate questions arriving in those conversations when you do with these younger children. It's better sometime to recall the so-called the anecdotal abilities of teaching by virtue of being with a little kid who can really unblock and decimate and break the box of idealized thought process you have as a teacher. And believe me, when I teach in the best known B schools across the globe or the farthest villages in India wherein I have to construct a thought process to be delivered in reality, I've realized one value proposition. You need to realize the value proposition of being a learner. It's okay to the little children and the students to do mistake. You need to have something called patience with perseverance. I call it as consistency of emotional stability. What is the consistency of emotional stability when somebody does a mistake, creates iconic world wars to be won or matches to be won on a regular basis? Ask their coach, he will explain this better. Sometimes live life with a lot of enthusiasm. If you don't bring in the enthusiasm as a teacher, who else can be? Many times we have the monkeys grown to baboons, realize that we need to be extremely away from students' energy levels. Let me tell you, at any given point in time, a teacher is one who can bring in the induction effect in students, thereby being an enthu cutlet. Smile doesn't cost you anything. We have forgotten the fact that smile is very, very expensive. It's okay to smile and smile ever. Besides, it gives you enough opportunity to expand your muscles on your face. It also gives a feeling of, I know you, you know me, we can work together. Lock the word called duty as a teacher, sometimes have a desire to give back. Do not go to teaching or to the classroom with half-hearted effort and 20 years best students' notes. Say, I'm here in a race, I'm in the final leg of the race, and I'm going to compete with equally competent people who are going to run with me. Please bring in your best-in-class potential to the classroom. It's a lot of engagement and activity which generates something called creativity. You without an activity, it has no value. I told you this, there is a great amount of induction effect in enthusiasm cutlet behavior, which is driven by physical energy level to be showcased in the classroom. I always say this, mental agility is directly proportional to physical agility is directly proportional to mental ability. If you do not have these proportions of engagement, very soon you're going to lose on the battle of your ability to survive for 3 decades of teaching experience. Maybe you need to insure, or insurance should be taken for your voice. So it's a matter of habits, getting into mindset, and regular behavior leading to an action as a brilliant teacher. If you're able to do that on a regular basis, let me tell you, you set right, you tune your attitude and desire well. Earlier speaker alluded to a brilliant concept of the difference between Kohli and Sachin Tendulkar. I have a differentiating factor between the two, which is called an attitude. Talent takes you to a level, attitude takes you to the next level. Before I close my session today, I just want to bring in 3 concepts for your memory. The audience whom I survive with has to survive with 3 factors: sustenance, satisfaction, and identity. Today, my generations of kids and students look for identity. Can you create, as a teacher, have self-gratification identity identified in your students? If you've done that, satisfaction and sustenance in your profession of teaching happens automatically. Thank you very much.